Welcome to Mindboost Moments, a podcast for those who want to hear from like-minded people and how they're making a dent in the world. So join me on my continued journey of learning and discovery. In this episode, I have a fab chat with Sean Marcs, Learning and Development Manager at BaxterStorey and Chair of Shine UK, the company's LGBTQIA+ network. Sean shares his fresh perspective on leadership and inclusion, gleaned from both his professional journey and the hands-on experience of parenthood. Sean opens up about returning to work and how subtle shifts in relationships and dynamics can reshape not just teams, but his own approach to leadership. This is Mindboost Moments.
Hi, my name is Sean Marcs. I'm the Learning and Development Manager at BaxterStorey. I look after all things learning. A large part of my role is service, leadership development, and that's what kind of excites and makes me passionate. I'm also the chair of Shine UK, which is our LGBTQIA+ network. So I'm deeply passionate and embedded in the direction of our inclusion and diversity.
What else is new? So what's changed then during your time off and then coming back to BaxterStorey?
Gosh,
What have you noticed?
what have I noticed? Oh, it's strange. I think when you go on leave, and then you come back into a business, you kind of ask when you first join back, you kind of go, "What's changed? What's different?" Everyone's like, "Oh, nothing. Everything's the same."
And then you start feeling it.
And then you kind of get into the thick of it, and you realize there's all these, I suppose, relationship and dynamic shifts and changes, and things that have evolved, and people that have got more confident or more settled in the kind of direction of travel. And you kind of, it's weird because it's not a tangible difference. It's something that you just kind of notice, you kind of feel as you walk into a room. So it's been interesting to try and find my place in the world again, and kind of my place in this new, not a new version of me. I'm the same person, but my brain is operating in a different way again because it's got more things to hold on to, and so it is a bit kind of like a reintroduction of who I am and who I am in the business. I think when I first joined, I created an onboarding that was based on my expectations of the way I was delivering at the end of last year before I went on leave. And so when I was all guns blazing, I had the routine down pat, one child down pat, have this under lock and key. And so I created a plan that was based on the version of Sean that was, operating on all the cylinders. So my day one was delivering a full day insights workshop. And I was like, whoa, like I felt the wave of that by the afternoon. I think in that first week, Pearson was sent home sick from nursery, then Summer was sent home from sick from nursery, Gray was away working in Manchester. So it was like a car crash of a week of a reintroduction. And so it's been, for me, learning how to manage my own expectations of myself. And then just to kind of get a bit of a feel of the lay of the land where you can't define it. You have to kind of just experience it. And I think, the business is just all guns blazing. Like, I think, whereas there's been a lot of kind of setting up last year, there's a lot of embedding and driving and make happen this year. And I think everyone's been non-stop trying to make that the case. And then trying to kind of, a valuable impact in the work that we're doing across the board. So all and nothing and everything at the same time.
Wow. So given the amount of change in your life in actually quite a short space of time, how does that impact how you look at like leadership development or leaders or the training that you approach in general? Has that influenced what your experience in your life? Does it impact that?
It does in a way, in the sense of, I think, when you have children, you realize that they're one day going to go out into the workplace and be in the world. And you think about how you as a parent want to set them up for success. And you want to create workplaces that they can thrive in. And I think for me, it's the realization that every person that walks in is somebody's child or, somebody's family member. They equally want to be able to thrive and enjoy what they're doing and better themselves and reach that full potential. And then I think, it's interesting because when Summer at the moment is learning how to read. she came to me like a month ago going, Daddy, I really want to learn how to read. She's 3. She just loves books and she just wants to read. And so we've got this new app that, when we sit down together each week a couple of times to go through some reading, and the enthusiasm of like, she's like, yes, I've got it. And actually, it made me kind of really consider the bite-sized nature of how we actually learn. I think sometimes in businesses, we go full throttle with the big kind of learning programs, and you're going to do a whole day of this, and it's going to then take you off and you can be an expert in it. Because we have no time, actually doesn't work. Because, when I look at the way she learns and the way a child learns, the way we all learn, it's those drip feeding of things that we build up upon that helps create the habit of recognition, and then manages our own expectations. So, if she learns about the letter E one day, she's not going to just remember the letter E the next day. Actually, there's a few kind of drop feeds of that repetition of the letter E that then she goes, oh, it's a letter E for elephant.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just the realization that from what I do, how can I be aware of really the way people learn, not thinking about what the business need is and how quick we need that to happen, but actually how can we set people up for success in the environment we're creating to make the learning as effective as possible, that they're able to take things away, and how do we drip feed it afterwards? So it's not just an event, it's the journey and the experience that they take with them into their roles and into what they do every day.
And how do you influence that then in a corporate environment? Because that seems super logical. I continuously say, like, I'm really curious because I've got a childlike mind and I can see life through both an adult and a child and stay really curious. And so if you said to me, like, I've been observing my children and they absolutely don't try and consume everything. They need repetition. They need short things. I would get it, but why? Like, a lot of corporate businesses don't. So how do you start influencing? I've observed this, and this is a better way to train people or to get people to change what they're doing.
I think in some ways it is giving, I suppose, senior leaders or the influential leaders within the business the opportunities to remember what learning is like.
Yeah.
I think sometimes what happens is you get to a certain level and not that you stop learning, but you stop being a part of kind of formal learning or learning events, or, you're too busy for that because you've got so many different
Yes.
environments
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But actually, how can we, my capacity, how can I remind them of what that learning is really like for them, their
Yeah.
experience of learning, and then get them to translate that to, well, actually, then how can we make that experience of learning better for others in the way that they learn? I think, there's other elements to that where, from our side of things, how do we design things in such a way where they're not learning events, where it really is about thinking about what could be covered prior to you being with them, or a digital piece of learning, and then what do you get them to take away to continue those conversations, and then how do we set up managers and leaders within what we've created to facilitate those conversations well. So for example, at the moment I'm running a hospitality leadership program. And what we do before and after each session is we do have pre-work, we have post-work, but equally for the leaders, we have some pre-questions that they can have around conversations. And then we have post-questions. These are the things that they've covered. These are things you should look for in what might change or adapt or they might test out. And these are the conversation starters that you can have to help them think through some of that learning. And we're kind of plugging that in across that 10-month journey that we have with them. So it's a little bit of that. And then I think it's the proving the value or the impact of that. So where they are committed to, again, that drip feeding, beating what I call, what's known as like the forgetting curve.
Yeah.
And making, once we can beat that forgetting curve and show the impact and the value of that time that's needed from a business perspective, then they go, oh, okay, well, this is driving a business outcome, which again, I guess, any learning development team will say, often we forget to prove impact because we're too busy creating the great learning, but we're not connecting it to the business outcome and the results. It's like, well, what's it actually driving? What's
What's it
what are we
done?
doing?
Yeah.
What's it?
Yeah.
So I think it's making those stronger connections from the get-go. That's really important, and it's really interesting. With the forgetting curve, I was in a workshop yesterday, and it was around. It was a manager talk, HR toolkit piece for managers, and we're looking at onboarding for team members. And we, like many of the businesses in the hospitality, it's a rush of, we need get people on the floor and operating and working and doing, and we've got this great kind of onboarding plan, but it's actually how well do they leverage that or utilize that. And then I showed them the forgetting curve, and I think they're all amazed at how quickly our brains forget things across a 6-day period if we don't have that nudge of learning that helps drip feed that. So
and that's also enhanced or diminished by the environment that people are operating in and the pressures that they're under as well. But, I mean, onboarding is a great one. I love the idea of onboarding, working with people on onboarding, but you can imagine, how do people feel when they first step into a business? They're either, so excited that they can't absorb too much information, or they're so nervous that it has the same response. The outward presentation is very different on that, but they're in this place where there's so much going on that forgetting curve is going to be just amplified so much. And therefore you then come back to, what's the environment that we're creating? What's that safe space? What's the safety net? Because it doesn't matter if you're brand new into role or a business, you feel that as much as you're an established leader going through a program. Because I mean, actually, in a leader's mind sometimes, that the risks are heightened because they sort of almost think, I do not want to fail. I know I'm learning, but I don't want to fail. I don't want to be judged on not getting things right. So therefore I'm at risk at not trying anything. So how do you create those safety nets and those safe spaces to go, it's fine, let's just, relax and start learning a bit?
I think that's where you introduce that sense of play. Again, going back to that childish curiosity, they are not afraid to fail. And they're not afraid to try again. And actually, again, when I think of Summer, I can see her getting hard on herself, and me getting hard on her doesn't make her do better at that particular thing. Actually, it's like, how can we create a sense of fun about it, or and then get a bit of sense of recognition around it that helps motivate her to try again and maybe do something differently. And I think it's, you're right in terms of when leaders are so fixated on, what's the risk, and kind of putting really strong parameters in, actually you destroy creativity and innovation, because there is only one way, and this is the only direction of travel we're going to, because this is the guaranteed great result. But actually, I think there's excitement in, could there be a better result if you allow some more innovation and creativity to happen among that. And I think that's where, you start to see leaders and teams where there's more of that coaching culture, where there's more of that questioning, get them involved in the solution and the action and the direction and the way forward, rather than telling them the action and the direction and the way forward. When they can't do what you've told them to do, they'll come back and say, I can't do it. You told me to do this, but I can't do it. And then, you'll try and tell them to do something else. But actually, if you get them to create that solution, people often find ways that best work for them, or more innovative ways of working and thinking about it differently to what your kind of individual brain can do. And so I think it is, how do we enable leaders to be able to create those environments of psychological safety and safety to create and fail? And then equally, from a higher level, how do we, as a business, celebrate the leaders who are able to create and fail? Like, how do we celebrate failure? And actually, we often, across the board, and in lots of different businesses, you celebrate success. And actually, there should be an award for failure. Who had the biggest failure that we learned from, that we did such a great job at, that we now has helped us innovate in this way because we had such a big failure over here? And I think if we celebrated that, people would be more inclined to try to fail.
You're right. And some of it is about that language as well. So we've got a predetermined connection with the word failure. But actually, what does determine failure? It's just a different outcome to what you were expecting. And if you repackaged it, that's almost the start of the journey, isn't it? To say, it's just a different outcome, but we've still succeeded in this. So let's celebrate that. But also, you've got to start changing what the measurements are, because we often think, as you've just said, like you think about salespeople, they're rewarded on the amount of sales they get, but there's no measure about how they've got to that win. What's the impact on other people? And actually, if we just changed our measures of success, because they're quite rudimentary, aren't they? You've either done it or you haven't. And we don't invest in this middle ground to go, do you know what? This is a really different outcome, but it's amazing. This is what it's done, or you've got to it by supporting and bringing everybody on board, not just trampling of everyone and just meeting your goals. And so that's where we get the bigger thinking as well, to go, hold on, what's the culture? How do we bring everyone along for this journey?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we can do, in the sense that, through, pulse surveys, we have cultural assessment surveys in BaxterStorey, through kind of talking to people on the ground, through understanding, what is the smell of the place, the culture that you kind of walk into. Actually, instead of looking at the financial spreadsheet and going, who's at the top financially, because you're right, you can get to a number in many sorts of ways. You can get there completely the wrong way. Actually, have a look at the top 5, and then actually see who's got to the top with the greatest culture created underneath. And as opposed to getting for the top number, go for the top culture with the top number. That combination between the two, doing it the right way to get that great result versus the wrong way to get a fantastic one.
So, and all of that stuff has been enhanced by you observing your son and daughter.
Absolutely. It's just so funny because you catch yourself having these strong expectations, and equally, I think, Summer is very smart. She's very switched on. She's very independent, and sometimes you actually skip a few steps. You forget that she's just 3. I mean, she acts like a teenager, but you forget that she's just 3, and you have to kind of then go, oh, I've got to backpedal, and actually I've got to sit in here with her and allow her to do this. But equally, I think we need to show her as parents that we are not perfect, and that we equally fail, and that we celebrate ourselves with that. So it's actually some of our own language wrapped around, how do we talk about ourselves? How do we talk about when we've done something wrong or something hasn't quite worked? If, I've made something for dinner and it is the most horrible tasting meal you've ever had in your life, am I, cursing myself and getting really frustrated and down on myself? Or, am I talking about, okay, well, that didn't work out so well, but maybe there's a couple of other ingredients we can try and play with next time to make it that an even better meal, because there's something there that I really like, and there's a creativity element to it. What could we do?
So that behavior automatically rubs off on children, doesn't it? And then they'll, and if the lasting response is, actually, I just roll with stuff and we adapt and we move on, what a powerful future it looks like, rather than what we've traditionally seen. I've made an error. Like, I'm going to call it a failure. I've made a failure. Oh, it's the worst thing in the world. I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to admit to it, and I'm going to try and style it out. And people just look like idiots a lot of the time when you try and do that, rather than go, oh, God, what can we do here then? How can we work together? What's the next step that we can take? And you think, if everyone was like that in the business, so you still need like the different profiles of people to go, right, I'm going to grab this and we're going to lead forward. But if everyone was adaptable, flexed, and were really open and honest, you go, well, that sounds like an amazing place to be, right?
Yeah. And I think there is a little bit of that, is that the ability to be honest, because again, children have no filter. They don't learn to filter at that stage, and so they are honest. She's honest about how she's feeling and what she's thinking and what she's doing. There's no question of that. And actually, it's really helpful, because then I know the environment to create. And somewhere along the lines, when we turn to adults, we feel as though we have to shut down our ability to share how we're thinking or feeling, particularly in work environments where you don't feel that that's safe enough to do. And actually, how amazing would it be if we allowed people to talk and share and feel, and then we can create environments to help support that and nurture that. And I think we forget that, again, as children, like for children, our behavior, how we show up as parents, as adults, influences the way that they show up and behave and see a space. And I think we make the assumption that when somebody turns an adult, that doesn't matter anymore because they are their own person. But actually, our energy, what we bring into a room, is so infectious, and can have such a huge impact. It can change the course of a day, a mood, a person's kind of moment. depending on what we bring into that space. I mean, we've all heard, I've heard the term mood hoover or dementor, that person who sucks out the life out of a space, and you can feel them as they walk in the room. And those are the ones that kind of like plug in and
Just
supercharge and
light
energize
it up.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it helps tell people who they can be within that space, who they're allowed to be. And if that is themselves, it is you bringing your individuality that helps other people bring their own individuality. And I
Yeah.
think we don't, because it's not always instant. So, like, for example, I'll use a work example and a family example. Family example first, in our kitchen is our dance floor. Like, we are a family that listens to lots of Disney, lots of musicals and dances. And Summer works Alexa like the expert that she is. Songs. Currently, it's "Show Me the Way to Amarillo." I've never heard that song. It now annoys me, but she loves it. But for her, all the time, anytime she gets in the kitchen, she just wants to dance and have fun and let loose and just express and be.
Why not?
That's because that's what we created in that space. And, again, that's not instant. It's something that she's grown up with. And I think in business is the same. It's not instant. It's something that happens. So when I think back to when I was with another business and I started to wear heels into work for the first time. And in this business, nobody wore heels into work. There was a man. And it was a very testosterone, male heavy environment. I had no idea how
Yeah.
it was going to go down, but I wanted to wear heels. So,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
And I did. And I kind of just carved my own path within that business. And I thrived as a result, which is fantastic. What I didn't realize I was doing in that moment was I was giving people permission to be their authentic selves by demonstrating that I was going to be my authentic self no matter what in that
Yeah.
moment. And I got this lovely message 3 years after I left that business from someone who I worked with in the team who was at that time in the closet and wasn't comfortable to come out. And from watching me in my heels, said that she had the bravery to come out. She found her now wife from that same business. They're married. They've been together for a few years,
Wow.
and she just thanked me because of the way that I showed up in the workplace, helped show her that that was okay and she could be herself. And so, again, it's not, I think sometimes within business, we look for that instant gratification or that instant signals that we're doing the right things. But actually, sometimes it's the slow burn where you see the change and you see the influence and the impact of the energy that you bring, the person you show up
Yeah.
as.
I mean, and what a fab story, because what's going through my head is that some of the phrases that you've just used there, that she was in the closet, and I just think, oh my God, do we still need people to behave like that? But we create the environments that suppress, the things that allow people to go, doesn't matter. And just that, how you must have felt to go, I'm just going to put these heels on today and see what happens. I don't care. I've never done it, but I'm going to see what happens. And then the positivity. But I mean, we're on a journey, not just in like people, the world, everything. It's all a journey, isn't it? And I think we're moving slowly to a place where you go, wear what you want, be what you want, as long as it's not hurting people, offending people, then you should be your authentic self. And we should get away from these phrases to go, oh no, I'm hidden, I'm in the closet, I'm not going to come out. I keep thinking the idea of coming out is like, oh, it's a big party to say, I feel, what it's really saying is, I feel safe, I feel comfortable to share that. We shouldn't have this, like, this shouldn't really be a place where we go, am I there yet? Am I safe to out myself? It's like, but as I say, we're on a journey, aren't we? And things are slowly becoming more accepting. A lot of ways, it's not ideal. I also asked you before we started what excites you, what makes you fizz with energy, because and I know actually from our previous conversation you touched on it slightly there, and I just wanted to carry on that momentum of what excites you. I mean, it might have changed now. Now you got Pearson.
Right, I know. I mean, look, at the essence, people still excite me. So, I am solar powered. I get my energy from people. I'm at my best when I'm in an environment where I'm with others. And I think it's, for me, kind of, again, I say it, I get what's exciting about Pearson or what excites me about Summer, it excites me about people I meet is when I can see something click and shape and they start to take an idea or a concept and they make it their own and they thrive within that. So, in a past life, I was a dancer and a choreographer. And the thing that I loved about that was I would have an idea of a movement, um, and somebody would take that movement and then they would add their own style and signature to it that would just make it come alive in a way I could never have imagined. And I think that's what I really enjoy in a learning environment. You can create kind of a great learning experience and a learning journey, but seeing how people make that their own and become their own person through that, not the same as everybody else, their own person through that is what excites me. See what, how they use it and make that come alive in their own way. And so, yeah, that absolutely still brings me the fizz and the energy, whether that be my daughter dancing, which she does a lot of, or a leader who takes something that they've learned and just expands with it. Again, takes it to somewhere where you could never think or imagine it could go.
And I get the same actually with designs. I'm like a really frustrated designer because I know what, I think I know what good design looks like, but I can't put it together. And I'm on about digital design, which is why I lean into, Owen's our creative director. So I have these mad ideas, but I've got no idea how to bring them to, to reality. And it, like in a couple of seconds, it's just made a few clicks and I'm like, yes, that's exactly what we were thinking. Like, how do you do that? No, I just do it. Like, it's mad sometimes. But I'm also thinking, so you radiate like energy from, seeing success in other people, but you're the live wire in that party. What tips do you sort of have for other people that might be that introvert character and they're sitting there going, I wish I could be, a bit more enthusiastic about stuff, and it's sort of contained in them?
I think it's not feeling that you have to be the live wire in every situation. I think as a person who is a live wire, sometimes I do burn myself up because I do get over enthusiastic about, in all the spaces, and I need to temper my own energy levels around that. So, but I think as an introvert, my husband, he presents has quite extroverted energy, but he's battery. He needs to charge batteries at the end of the day. So it's thinking about what are those things that truly excite you, that you really want to create a voice for, and then how can you do that in a way that feels comfortable for you? So, is it that actually it's not a group full of people, but it's a small group, or if it's a one-to-one conversation, you bring the energy in that, and then that kind of, again, from those small kind of connections, bigger connections grow, and or bigger energy rifts get created. So I don't think you have to be the supercharged being in the space. You can be the mini charge that creates the current that is created from the energy that you bring.
The connections.
The connection. So it's finding a way that it feels comfortable to you. But I also equally love, so I just listened to a podcast by Adam Grant, and he was talking about, because he's an introvert, but as part of what he needs to do, he has to get on stage and he has to present and he has to bring energy. He has to create the stories and the connection points for people. And he talks about how he has to get uncomfortable in order to live true to his values. And his values are about bringing that information to people to help make work not suck, to help better people's lives and help organizations be better for people. And in order to do that, he has to get uncomfortable by putting himself out there. So it's maybe thinking about, what are your values, that again, the things that matter to you, that help you, motivate you to get uncomfortable where you need to be able to create what you need to in that room or in that space, or share the information that you have unlocked, hidden inside.
And I love that idea as well, and because a lot of people think that's what good looks like, being the live wire all the time, and I just can't do it. But it's tempering that to what you feel comfortable and how you can influence in your little way. It doesn't mean that, again, going back to that word failure, it doesn't mean that you've failed. You're just demonstrating stuff in a different way that's aligned to you as a person and your values and how you feel comfortable to do it. And so there's no wrong to it. It's finding how you feel comfortable and encouraging.
Yeah. And where does it most matter? Where's the impact for you? And then the other bit is like what you said. You talked about, so the collaboration that you have in your team, where someone can just the click create the ideas. You're like, oh, how could you do that? And I think equally, I present as me, but actually I am the product of a team of people that have worked on lots of different things, where I've been able to bounce ideas off them, or I've been able to think through things and I might have had an idea, but actually, how do we make that reality? And then how do we think logistically about that where it's not my strength? So,
Yeah.
it's how do you leverage your team or the people around you to collaborate in a way where you feel comfortable to be able to share it in the way that you need to, or you're comfortable with other people, sharing that idea on your behalf, but you've helped collaborate and input into that. So not everyone needs to be kind of at the front. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
playing place.
And I sort of, I mean, it's interesting because we did a team podcast the other day with with a few of us from mindboost, and I was asking like a similar question. So, what is each of their superpower? Now, I know, I think I know what their superpower is and what they bring, and it was interesting because they turned it around on me and said, "Well, what's yours then? What do you do?" I said, I don't actually know," and I think they just think sometimes I'm being like either super humble, but I got to a point where I thought, I genuinely don't do much in this. Like, you're the creatives, you do it. Then they say, no, but you pull it together, and that's really important. And sometimes it's just recognizing the stuff that you think is mundane, actually everyone else values as well.
Yeah, and everyone has something valuable to contribute,
Yeah.
and it's making sure that everyone knows that they have something valuable to contribute and that it is valued. And I think that's kind of the key thing around that team. So I'm glad that your team were able to do that for you and highlight to you. Without you, we'd be off from different directions. You actually pull this into something that actually means something.
Yeah, and sometimes you just, like you've just said, you need to hear that from other people to go, no, what you do is really important, because you can just get to a point where you go, I just go through the motions. You go, no, if we took you out, we'd start falling down, just like you think if you took one of us out, we'd all fall down. And so that is really, important and powerful stuff, just to tell people that.
Yeah, we're the sum of our parts.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing then, I also ask you, what do you think your superpower is? Or what does everyone else think your superpower is?
So energy, I think, is probably my superpower. I can't escape that. And I think, if whenever I ask for feedback, energy is the most common word that comes up. Um, but I think it's, my ability to inject some enthusiasm into the space or into a conversation that helps bring to life something. So I think I'm able to kind of bring something to life, whether that be a feeling or an idea or a vision. I think my energy channeling that in a really positive way brings something to life that might otherwise fall flat or be a little bit kind of not met by as many people. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of my strength, is how I bring something to life.
And that enables then other people to start bringing other things to life.
100%. And also
Yeah.
thinking about how they can contribute to that.
Yeah.
So I'm all about, I lead with Sunshine Yellow for anyone who does insights. So it's very much involved me in things, but I love to involve others. And so, in that, it's how can other people be part of that and really kind of blaze a trail together in what that
Yeah.
could look like.
Love it. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Okay.
What
I
I
don't use
love
it
what
everywhere, but that's okay.
I really enjoy that. What I'm really getting a sense of is how much your experience of observing your children is influencing some of that, that decision making at the minute.
It's inescapable. I mean, when you've got an 8-month-old and a 3-year-old, it is
I
truly inescapable.
I mean, so my son's 28, the other one's 30, and he's so my youngest has just bought his own house, and when I reflect back on stuff, I say it's a mad time for young people, right? Because you're trying to work out your place in the world, you're trying to establish your career, you're trying to get your finances and mortgage and all that together, and while still maintaining a healthy relationship with your partner, and you're then thinking about it's just like a train coming at you all in one go. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I just think back, like, how do you cope with it, and how, what admiration you have for young people to deal with that? Actually, it's like it's a lot of stuff to think about.
It is a lot. And it's like, and I don't I don't believe that anything's balanced ever. I think there's harmony between things. So, if every part of my life represented a note in a song, they have their own moments where one might be a little bit of a low note and the other one might be on a high. And I think it's writing the harmony of what that looks like and appreciating that, it's a beautiful symphony at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's something I'm continuing to learn.
Yeah, that's part of life, isn't it? Just continuing that learning journey. Wow, thank you so much. This has been Mind Boost Moments. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to hear more, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. And if you want to learn how Mind Boost can really add feeling and emotion to learning experiences within your business, check out our website at mindboostlearning.com.